This is Fieldsports Channel News. Scotland is to move the opening of the Hind stalking season to the 1st of September for its deer culling contractors. In an effort to catch up with its publicly funded deer slaughter, now thought to be months and tens of thousands of animals behind schedule, the government-owned Forestry and Land Scotland plans to make out-of-season culling of female deer and dependents legal from the 1st of September, either on general licence or Section 5(6) authorisation granted by Scottish Natural Heritage. With calves still dependent on hinds, many stalkers are outraged on welfare grounds. The red deer season in Scotland for other deer stalkers remains the same. Did Chris Packham slip up in his marathon broadcasts on social media last week? As part of video posts that accompanied a mass lobbying of members of UK Parliaments and Assemblies, he admits that the RSPB believes only a minority of gamekeepers are involved in raptor persecution.
One of the most shocking things that came through when we were doing Hen Harrier Day was an interview that I had with Guy Shorrock, a long-standing member of the RSPB's investigations team. And what he said that was so poignant was that it's just a tiny handful of men, principally men, of course, who are doing this enormous damage when they're impacting on, as you mentioned, these charismatic bird populations. He suggested that it could be as few as 100 people that are stopping golden eagle, hen harrier, goshawk in some places, shorted owls, all of these birds from prospering. Just a tiny number of people, a tiny number of criminals. It's extraordinarily sad, isn't it, in the 21st century?
The admission follows years of Packham and the RSPB building a PR campaign around raptor persecution as a defining issue. And yet they admit here they believe it's only 100 people committing the crimes.
There are around 600,000 firearms and shotgun certificate holders in England and Wales, and over 1 million people involved in shooting. So 100 represents less than 0.1% of the overall shooting community. Now that 0.1% cannot be allowed to drive an anti-shooting agenda against shooting. That 0.1% cannot be allowed to alter decision makers' views. It is 0.1%, and while we must reduce that and stamp it out, it is not representative of the broader shooting community and the many benefits that we bring for conservation and communities alike.
Meanwhile, Packham's stepdaughter Megan McCubbin, now his co-presenter on BBC Wildlife television programme Springwatch, has recently been appointed as the new youth ambassador for the League Against Cruel Sports. Game shooting is good for the environment, but could do better. That's the conclusion of a review by the English government. However, a report in the Daily Telegraph shows that anti-shooting elements in government are keen to spin the review as evidence for a ban. The newspaper says that the review is a warning from Natural England that the game bird industry must change to protect the environment. Careful reading of the review, produced jointly by Natural England and Basque, reveals there is no such call. A week after badger cull SABs exposed the identities and details of hundreds of cullers online, they've done it again. This time the victim was a contractor who makes tracking devices. Not only have the SABs splashed his face onto social media, as well as his mobile phone number and address, but also photos of what it looks like inside his house that look like they've been taken from a property website. On Facebook, Innocent Badger, the group responsible for last week's leak, quoted a friend of the man saying he was petrified and about to crack. Surrey police are investigating. Police forces are issuing advice about dog thefts after an increase in cases this summer. These are 3 Cocker Spaniels taken from a car in Pudsey, West Yorkshire, by a round-faced, dark-haired man in his late 20s, driving a black 5-door 2006 plate Vauxhall Corsa with a loud exhaust and a number plate tied on with string. One of the dogs belongs to a Fieldsports Channel viewer. The Times newspaper reports on the increasing use of pet detectives called in to tackle the rise in dog theft. Bedfordshire Police is trying to reassure dog owners that they're taking thefts seriously, and Cambridgeshire Police released this video about how to protect your dogs. A farmer in a Dorset village is appealing for help after sheep were deliberately run over. The culprit or culprits are thought to have driven off along a main road near the village of Sixpenny Handley into a field of ewes and lambs and mown down the animals in their sleep before driving off. Facebook user Lauren Millard is asking for anyone in the village who saw anything suspicious on the night of the 21st of August 2020 to call the police. Painting one blade of a wind turbine reduces bird fatalities, according to a new study. Scientists in Norway say the simple action reduces avian deaths by 72%. The scientists at the Norwegian Institute for Nature Research examined bird death data from 2006 to 2016 at a farm off the country's west coast. They say the white turbines appear to birds as a motion blur, so they don't see them, but the black one registers. They hope the results of their research will make wind turbines more appealing and reduce public opposition to them. A game reserve in South Africa is selling its game meat in order to get through the coronavirus crisis. Somkanda Game Reserve is owned by the local community and co-managed by the Wildlands, a programme of the anti-hunting body Wild Trust. The reserve is selling the venison as stew, meat, hamburger, sausages and mince to make up for money lost during the lockdown. The reserve plans to sell up to 800 animals this year and says so far the meat, which is relatively cheaper than the local farm livestock, has been popular.
This thing called the wildlife economy, and it's working. We're selling in big markets. Even health conscious people that are worried about the planet and the impact of intensive agriculture, especially cattle farming, are looking at venison as an alternative, and as people learn how to actually cook it and prepare it properly, it's becoming quite a stock item on people's tables.
Meanwhile, lockdown in Kenya has left millions unemployed and hungry, and game animals are under threat. With hunting banned, the only group of people defending animals in Kenya are the government-run Kenya Wildlife Service. They're not well resourced enough to prevent locals poaching endangered animals to survive. What's private and what's public in the USA? Two hunters are about to find out for us. A pair of Tennessee property owners called Terry Rainwaters and appropriately Hunter Hollingsworth are suing the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, or TWRA, for what they call illegal surveillance. According to the lawsuit, the TWRA climbed fences and walked past no trespass signs to place trail cams on private property in order to observe hunting activities. The TWRA maintains the practice is legal because of a 1929 ruling that says property owners have no reasonable expectation of privacy on any private lands the court deems to be open field. The TWRA tried to get the case thrown out, but Judge Charles McGinley is allowing the hunters' suit to move forward. The two men are represented by a legal team from civil liberties law firm, the Institute for Justice.
Both of them have experienced unwanted intrusions by Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency officers. The officers have been wandering around their properties without a warrant or their consent. They've been recording video footage of the properties, and they've even been installing cameras in their trees to watch them 24/7. This case is about trying to put a stop to those practices.
France has a new darling. Joanna Clermont is the face of French hunting on Instagram. With more than 120,000 followers and a sponsorship contract from Browning, the 23-year-old law student posts pictures of herself shooting and hunting everything from grouse to wild boar, as well as photos of herself in glamorous locations. She is on a poster campaign on the Paris Metro for a new hunting TV network called Zone 300, and she's already getting death threats. But she's used to anti-hunt violence, following an assault on her by animal rights extremists when she was 18 years old. And finally, shooters and fishers in Scotland say it's one of the worst years ever for midges. These images by viewer Ian Schoen show just how bad. Some hardy shooters suggest unkindly that animal rights activist Carrie Simmons and her fiancé Boris Johnson cut short their Highland camping holiday, not due to security concerns, but because the nature she loves started to bite back. You are now up to date with Fieldsports Channel News. Stalking the stories, fishing for facts.